Hey guys, what's up? This is Roth and Chris here to talk a little Walking Dead.
Indeed.
We haven't been here doing a video for a while, but this is the one, right?
Yeah, this is it. There's a lot of payoffs in this particular episode, and a lot of, I would say it was like payoff, not set up for really anything, but...
Yeah,
really, really
this
awesome.
has been set up. I felt this was really earned. I'd been talking about these characters a lot in my reviews over the last season, and I felt like this was really earned. And in a lot of ways, I think it was what some of the audience saw coming. Now, we just want to say that we are going to reference one or two things from the comics, so if you haven't read the comics, don't want to hear about it, this may not be the video for you. But stay anyway, because it's just little references. So a lot of people had thought that Lizzie and Mika were Ben and Billy from the comic, and that it was headed exactly here.
There's some similarities, but not total similarities.
Well, Ben and Billy, there's a lot. Ben and Billy were younger. They were 5. They were twins, but they had been adopted in the comic by Andrea and Dale, who are both now dead.
Right.
In this case, they were adopted by Carol. Carol's character has taken a very different trajectory from the comic. One I love, by the way.
A lot better than the comic, honestly.
A lot better than the comic. She's almost like the character we wanted Andrea to be without being a sharpshooter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's what Kirkman kind of is doing with the series, is like, hey, I'm going to revise some of these characters to make them better than what they were.
Yeah, I love her. And Melissa McBride, no pun intended, killed it last night.
Yeah, she was great.
She was so great. So I think that's a similarity. The difference is, she's now, again, with Carol. The kids are now with Carol. They're a little older. And Lizzie seems to be, initially she seemed completely sociopathic.
Yeah.
And then she was somewhat sympathetic.
It was weird, though. I felt like there was this weird veneer of her caring all of a sudden about the zombies, which seemed totally at cross purposes with her like nailing animals to boards and stuff like that. So I felt like the setup felt a little false for her. To me, I think it would have been almost stronger if they just made her a sociopath through and through. And then the watershed moment was like, she just killed her sister. I think the reason that they had to put the zombie love thing in there was so that she could kill her sister and be like hopeful about her sister coming back. Because otherwise she's just a stone cold killer. Yeah,
well, again, like in the comic, he does say, don't worry, I didn't hurt his head, he's coming back. Because there was, with these 5-year-olds, this confusion about what life and death is, which to some degree makes sense in a world like this. I think what they've done in the show is, for the sake of a television audience, age the girls a little bit.
Yeah.
So that makes that more challenging.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what hurts it, because then if you're not 5, like, you probably do have an understanding. And I think one of the things that they do really well with Carl, but not so much with these two kid characters, that they make them less capable than kids actually are. I feel like kids have a perspective, like they can't do everything. They're physically not as like sort of imposing as adults, but they can do a lot of the stuff, and they think like a lot more. I feel like this situation would accelerate their learning too. So like I feel like kids would be a little bit more developed than these two kids were.
Well, I think that where, again, to me, that it was earned is that they sort of implanted the idea of this person we didn't know who very early on in the season, feeding the walkers at the gate, feeding them the rats. So with Lizzie and the animals, what I had assumed initially was like, oh, this is a sociopath who kills animals and likes to torture animals, and that's the first step that they take. And again, in the comic, they did have him torture a cat and kill a cat. So, but what it actually was, and why I felt this was okay, was they established two things. One, the idea is that Lizzie was a little off before the apocalypse,
Obviously, her sister was like, look at the flowers, Lizzie, you can see there's behavior that they had before.
Count to three, like this is a routine that they had. So I think the second thing was with the animals, that initially I had thought, especially with the rabbits, that she was sort of torturing and killing animals. But ultimately, what it really was that she was feeding the walkers, and they had established that at various points who she believed were her pets. So I do think that it was earned, but more importantly, this story wasn't really about Lizzie and Mika, right? It was about Carol.
Thankfully, it wasn't about them, because I think that was the part that was mishandled. The part that was handled really well was Carol and also Tyrese. And I think in that moment you see a couple moments where she goes out there and she sort of interrupts this play session that Lizzie's having with this zombie. That was a moment where it was like, okay. And then that whole sequence where they come upon her having killed Mika was just beautifully acted, I thought with all the characters, really. And just everything that led from that from that moment forward on the episode, I thought was just great.
I think it was really heartbreaking, and I also think that it was that sort of that moment, Carol's calmly enough kind of talking her off the ledge, give me the gun, it's cool, just head back, it's going to be fine. Even to when she let her out to ultimately execute her. There were a couple of things that I noticed about that. First of all, to some degree, is Carol not at this point the best leader on this show?
Yeah.
The girls couldn't survive. One girl couldn't survive, Mika, because she didn't have a mean bone in her body, meaning she wasn't willing to do what needed to be done. She wasn't willing to hurt others when it was necessary. Carol is.
Yeah.
She's willing to sacrifice her own heart. She can rip it out of her chest if it's what's good for the betterment of everyone. And two, she sees and accepts the world for what it is. She knows the threat when she sees it, and she eliminates it, but she doesn't kill at random.
The other thing that is interesting about her is she accepts the consequences of her actions. She pushes the gun over to Tyrese, and she's like, you do what you have to do. I've made my decision, and now this is the point where I have to reveal this to you because, I can't continue forward in this relationship otherwise. So I just was, love that scene.
I know, and this was the scene that I'd been waiting for because I was like, this is the group I want to see together. It's so full of tension and opportunity for conflict. And I think that it was beautifully executed the way that they were able to come to a resolve of forgiveness,
right,
which to some degree was a surprise for me. And it was the surprising choice and I think the smart choice to make. And he said, we're bonded by this now.
And I also think it was a relief for Tyrese in some ways because he's been living with this for a while. I think he's probably going to sleep a little bit better knowing the circumstances of what happened. And his first question was, did she suffer? And she's like, no, it was quick, and I think just that sort of knowledge for him is going to make he forgived her, but he said he's not going to forget.
And I think having lived through this experience, what they had to with Lizzie, that allowed him to reach that forgiveness in a way that makes sense for us as the audience and him as a character.
Right.
I think that we wouldn't have bought it, and they were speaking to us, the audience. She said, this wasn't Lizzie, as people theorize, this wasn't a stranger, this was me.
Right.
This was a conversation with the audience. But the big question is, Rick was not able to forgive her, so what does that say about him and his leadership skills and his ability to see and accept this world for what it really is? So that's our question to you guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Plenty to talk about in this episode. We couldn't get to everything. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say and keep it locked to IGN.